There are three people you need to understand before this story makes sense. First, my grandfather, Colonel Raymond Whitten, USMC, retired. He wore his service the way other men wore armor, and he believed the Marine Corps was the only institution that truly turned boys into men. Second, my brother Tyler, who inherited our grandfather's name, his physical presence, and the family's unshakable belief that he would be the one to carry the military legacy forward. Third, me, Sherry Whitten, the granddaughter who joined the Marines at 18 and spent the next 26 years learning how to be unseen. The story my family told about itself had been written long before I ever raised my right hand. Tyler was meant for greatness. I was meant for something. No one ever quite figured out what, but it certainly wasn't anything involving dress blues or command authority. I should have recognized the warning signs when my grandfather's invitation arrived on thick, formal cardstock, my name written in his unmistakable, precise hand. Family gathering, my 80th birthday. Attendance mandatory. The word mandatory had been underlined twice. Grandfather never did anything casually. I was sitting in my office at Camp Pendleton when it showed up, resting on top of a stack of operational reports waiting for my signature before the next deployment to Okinawa. My aide, Captain Morrison, had placed it there deliberately. He knew better than to bury personal mail, even when my calendar was packed with briefings. "Your grandfather's birthday, ma'am?" he asked. 80, I said. "He's convinced he'll live forever out of pure stubbornness." Morrison smiled. He'd met my grandfather once at a change of command ceremony 2 years earlier. The old man had evaluated him in a single glance and pronounced him adequate if overpolished. From grandfather, that was nearly praise. "Will you need the training schedule adjusted?" "No. It's over the weekend. I'll fly out Friday night and be back Sunday evening." "Understood, ma'am." I set the invitation aside and returned to the reports. Somewhere in the back of my mind, a quiet warning surfaced. This gathering wouldn't be like the others. Grandfather was giving things away, heirlooms. The invitation had mentioned it outright. 26 years in uniform had taught me to listen to my instincts. I ignored them. The Whitten family functioned according to a hierarchy that had nothing to do with age or accomplishment and everything to do with perception. At the top sat grandfather, the unquestioned patriarch, whose 3 years in Korea and decorated career formed the cornerstone of our family identity. Beneath him was my father, who spent 30 years as a defense contractor and wore his proximity to military life like borrowed valor. Then came Tyler, the golden grandson, who served 2 years in the National Guard before a knee injury ended his service and launched his current career in military consulting. And then there was me. I enlisted straight out of high school, ignoring my father's advice to consider college first and my mother's worries that the Marines were too harsh for a girl. Grandfather hadn't argued or praised me. He'd simply nodded once when I told him. At the time, I'd mistaken it for approval. I was wrong. The first decade of my career blurred into deployments and schools. I earned my commission, survived officer candidate school, and chased every qualification available. Iraq, Afghanistan, Iraq again. I led platoons, then companies. Major came, then lieutenant colonel. The promotions arrived steadily, without fanfare. I was good at my job, good at surviving, good at keeping my Marines alive. My family noticed none of it. At Christmas, Tyler held court, describing his consulting work, advising defense contractors on procurement strategies, earning 6 figures translating military culture for people who had never served. My father glowed with pride. "Tyler's doing real strategic work," he'd say. "Influencing defense policy at the highest levels." I sat quietly in civilian clothes, wine in hand, letting the conversation flow past me. When someone asked what I did, I kept it simple. "Still in the Marines, stationed in California." "Oh, that's nice," they'd reply, already losing interest. "Still enlisted?" "Officer, lieutenant colonel," a polite nod. Then the attention returned to Tyler. "So you were saying about the Pentagon contract?" It happened often enough that it became a ritual. I stopped correcting them, stopped explaining. When my mother introduced me as my daughter, "She's in the military," I smiled and let people assume I handled paperwork or logistics. It was easier than watching them fail to be impressed. The promotion to colonel came on a Tuesday morning in March. I was 43, had commanded a battalion for 2 years, and the board decided I was ready. The ceremony was small, my command staff, a few fellow officers, and the base commander who pinned the eagles on my collar. No family, I hadn't invited them. By then, I'd stopped trying. My mother called that evening. How was your day, honey? Good, busy. Well, don't overdo it. You know how you get when you're stressed. I looked at the Colonel's eagles resting in their case on my desk. I'll try, Tyler called an hour later. Hey, sis. Dad said you were up for some kind of promotion. It already happened. Oh, congrats. What is it, captain or something? Colonel, a pause. Wait, seriously, that's wow. That's pretty high up, right? Respectable. Yes. Well, good for you. Hey, I landed that Lockheed contract I mentioned. 6-month consulting gig on the F-35 program. Dad's thrilled. I'm happy for you. Thanks. Anyway, I should run. Let's catch up soon. Sure. He never did. Grandfather's 80th birthday fell on a Saturday in September. I flew into San Diego Friday evening, rented a car, and drove the familiar route to my parents' house in Rancho Santa Fe. The celebration was being hosted at my uncle's estate. He'd made his fortune in tech and owned the kind of property that required a staff. My mother greeted me at the door. Sherry, you look exhausted. Long week. Well, come in. Your father's in the study. Tyler's already here with Jessica. I hugged her, grabbed my overnight bag, and went upstairs to my old bedroom. It had been preserved like a museum display. High school pennants on the walls, yearbooks on the shelf, a twin bed with the same quilt from 20 years earlier. My mother believed memories should remain untouched. I changed into civilian clothes, pressed slacks, a blouse, minimal jewelry. The key to invisibility was looking polished but forgettable. I'd perfected it long ago. Downstairs, Tyler and my father were laughing over something on Tyler's phone. Jessica was helping my mother arrange flowers. There she is, Tyler said, pulling me into a hug, the mysterious sister. How long's it been? Christmas, 8 months. That long, time's wild, you look good. Healthy, you too. He'd filled out slightly, the easy softness of a man nearing 40 with a desk job and no physical training requirements. Still, he had the Witten jaw, the shoulders, the posture that suggested military service, even if his had been short and uneventful. So tomorrow's the big day, he said. Grandfather's been vague, but Mom thinks he's handing out some of his military stuff. Medals, photos, things like that. Makes sense. Yeah, though he's still sharp. Last time I visited, he gave me a 30-minute lecture on core values and modern warfare. I swear he reads everything. That sounds like him. You should come by my office next time you're in town, Tyler added. The consulting side of defense is fascinating. That's where the real decisions happen. I smiled politely. I'll think about it. Saturday arrived warm and clear. The party was scheduled for 2, but family was expected early to help. I arrived at noon to find orchestrated chaos, caterers assembling tables, my aunt issuing orders, cousins running decorations around the property. Grandfather sat in the library, watching through the French doors like a general overseeing troop movements. He looked smaller than I remembered. Age had compressed him, dulled some of his presence, but his eyes were still sharp, his bearing unmistakably marine. Sherry, he said when I entered. You came, you said attendance was mandatory. I did. He studied me. You look fit, still running every morning. Yes, sir, good. Discipline in small things leads to discipline in large things. It was the same speech he'd given me at 17 when I told him I was joining. I'd hoped for pride or recognition. Instead, I'd been sent home with a reading list and a lecture. We sat quietly for a moment. Tyler's doing well, he said at last. Defense consulting. Important work bridging the military and civilian worlds. Important, I repeated. And you're still active duty? Yes, sir. Where? Camp Pendleton, he nodded. Good base. I rotated through there in 68. Another pause. What do you do there? It was the first time in years he'd asked me directly. I chose my words with care. I command a regiment, infantry. About 3,000 Marines. His eyebrows lifted slightly. A regiment, that's significant. Yes, sir. Rank, colonel. He was silent for a long moment, absorbing it. Your father never mentioned that. I didn't tell him, not fully. Why not? Because Tyler's consulting contract would still have been more interesting. Because I'd learned that my achievements made people uncomfortable. They preferred me in a supporting role. I said none of this. Instead, seemed easier to keep work and family separate. Grandfather studied me with those sharp eyes. For a moment, I thought he might push, might ask the questions no one else had bothered to ask. Instead, he nodded slowly. Sometimes that's wise, he said. The moment passed, my aunt called that guests were arriving. Grandfather stood, straightened his blazer, and walked out to play the patriarch. I followed, invisible once again. The party was everything you'd expect for a military patriarch's milestone birthday. Lots of old Marines, lots of war stories, lots of back in my day proclamations. I circulated quietly, made small talk, and avoided the center of attention. Tyler naturally found the center and stayed there. He'd worn a tie with tiny American flags on it, a subtle signal of his military adjacent status. He was deep in conversation with a cluster of grandfather's old Corps buddies, explaining modern defense procurement with the confidence of someone who'd never actually had to requisition equipment under fire. I was standing near the bar nursing a club soda when someone approached. Older man, late 60s, impeccably dressed, something about his bearing read senior officer. "You're Raymond's granddaughter," he said. "Not a question." "Yes, sir. Sherry James Hart. I served with your grandfather in the sevens." He extended his hand. I shook it, firm grip evaluating. "Pleasure to meet you, General." His eyes sharpened. "How'd you know?" Bearing posture. "The way everyone in this room subtly defers to you." He laughed, observant. "Your grandfather mentioned he had family in the service." "That you?" "Yes, sir." "What do you do here?" It was the familiar question, the familiar dance. I could deflect, minimize, play my usual role. Instead, something made me answer honestly. "I'm a colonel. I command 2nd Regiment at Pendleton." Hart's entire demeanor shifted. "2nd Regiment Infantry?" "Yes, sir. You're Witten, Colonel Witten. I've read your after-action reports from Helmand Province. That urban combat operation in 15, brilliant piece of tactical thinking." I felt something crack in my chest. Someone knew. Someone had actually read my work. "Thank you, sir. We got lucky with intelligence." Luck had nothing to do with it. That was first-rate command under pressure. He studied me. "Why haven't I met you before?" "I've been friends with Raymond for 40 years. I keep a low profile." Clearly, he glanced across the room at Tyler. "That your brother holding court?" "Yes, sir." He mentioned he was in the Guard, 2 years medical discharge, knee injury. Hart's expression said everything he was too polite to voice. "And you're a regimental commander with combat decorations, but somehow he's the one everyone talks about. He's very good at talking, apparently." Hart raised his glass. "Well, Colonel, it's an honor to meet you. If you're ever at the Pentagon, look me up. I'm on the Joint Chiefs Staff. We could use more officers with your experience." "I appreciate that, sir." He moved on, but the conversation stayed with me. Someone saw, someone knew. At 4:00, my uncle clinked a glass and called for attention. Grandfather moved to the front of the room and the crowd quieted. "Thank you all for coming," he began. 80 years, hard to believe. I've lived through wars, raised a family, watched the Corps evolve. Today, I want to honor that legacy by passing on some items that have meant a great deal to me." He gestured to a table that had been set up, covered with a cloth. My aunt removed it, revealing an array of objects, medals and cases, an antique watch, photographs, military memorabilia. "These are pieces of history," grandfather continued. "They deserve to be with people who will value them, who understand what they represent." He picked up a metal case, bronze star I recognized. "Tyler, come here." My brother stepped forward, beaming. Grandfather opened the case. "This is from Korea, chosen reservoir. I want you to have it. You understand service, understand sacrifice. Keep it safe." Tyler took it reverently. "I will, grandfather." "I promise." More items were distributed. My cousin received the antique watch, grandfather's father's watch, worn through 2 wars. My uncle got a footlocker of photographs and documents. Each gift came with a story, a connection to military history. I stood at the back, expecting nothing. I'd learned not to expect things. Then grandfather picked up a cardboard box, ordinary, unmarked. "Sherry, this is for you." I stepped forward, confused. He handed me the box. It was heavier than expected. I opened it. Kitchen utensils, old, mismatched, a wooden spoon, a dented pot, a rusty whisk. Things you'd find at a garage sale. The room was very quiet. "You'll actually use these," grandfather said. His tone was gentle, almost affectionate. "You're practical, not like Tyler, collecting things for show. You'll put these to work." Laughter rippled through the crowd, good-natured, warm. "Look at practical Sherry with her cooking tools while Tyler gets the war medals." I held the box, feeling its weight, not the physical weight, the symbolic weight. 26 years of service distilled into garage sale cast-offs. Tyler was grinning, my father was chuckling, even my mother looked amused. Then General Hart raised his glass. The movement was subtle but commanding, decades of authority in a single gesture. The laughter died. "To the Colonel," he said clearly. "Her medals outnumber everyone in this room combined." The silence that followed was absolute. Grandfather's head snapped toward Hart. "What?" Hart met his eyes. Your granddaughter, Colonel Sherry Whitten, Regimental Commander, 2nd Marines. 2 Bronze Stars, Silver Star, Purple Heart, Navy Marine Corps combination with Valor. He listed them methodically, letting each one land. I've read her combat reports. She's one of the finest tactical minds in the Corps. The box felt suddenly light in my hands. I stood frozen, watching my family's faces cycle through confusion, disbelief, shock. That's my father started. She's a colonel. Tyler's voice cracked. Hart kept his eyes on grandfather. You didn't know, it wasn't a question. Grandfather was staring at me, his face pale. The room had dissolved into whispers. Other guests who'd stayed silent, now watching the revelation unfold. Sherry, my mother's voice was small. Is this true? I set the box down carefully on the nearest table. Kitchen utensils clinked together. Yes, ma'am, but you never said, you never told us. I tried several times. No one listened. Tyler was shaking his head. This is insane. You're a colonel. Like a real colonel, real eagles and everything. And medals, combat medals. Yes, how many? I'd stopped counting years ago. Enough. General Hart moved closer, his presence adding weight to the moment. Colonel Whitten led one of the most successful counterinsurgency operations in Helmand Province. She commanded under fire, brought all her Marines home. She's being considered for brigadier general. Grandfather made a sound, something between a gasp and a groan. He reached for a chair, lowered himself into it. Suddenly, he looked every one of his 80 years. You're being considered for general, he repeated faintly. It's preliminary, nothing decided. Why didn't you tell me? The question I'd been avoiding for 2 decades. I looked at the kitchen utensils, at Tyler clutching his Bronze Star, grandfather's Bronze Star, at the assembled family who'd spent years making me invisible. Because you never asked, I said simply. You saw what you wanted to see. I was the practical one, the quiet one. Tyler was the military legacy. It was easier to let you believe it than to fight for recognition I didn't need from you. Didn't need, my father's voice was sharp. We're your family and I'm a Marine. I get my recognition from my Marines, from my commanding officers, from people who actually see what I do. Tyler's face had gone red. So what? You've just been lying to us for 20 years. I've been answering the questions you asked. You asked if I was still in. I said yes. You asked what I did. I said I was based at Pendleton. You never asked for details because you assumed there weren't any worth knowing. My mother was crying. We would have been proud. Would you have found ways to make Tyler's consulting work more important? Would Dad have bragged about me at his firm? Or would he have stuck with the safe story about his son, the military expert? No one answered. General Hart cleared his throat. Perhaps this is a conversation for family. Colonel, if you need anything, I'll be at the hotel. Thank you, sir. He squeezed my shoulder once, a gesture of solidarity, and left. Other guests were beginning to disperse, sensing the party was over. Grandfather hadn't moved. He was staring at the box of kitchen utensils like it had personally betrayed him. I'm sorry, he said finally. Sherry, I'm so sorry for what? For assuming, for never asking, for giving your medals to Tyler while handing me cooking tools, all of it. His voice broke. I spent 40 years in the Marines. I thought I knew what service looked like. I thought I could see it in people, and I missed it in my own granddaughter. You didn't miss it, you didn't look. He flinched. That's fair. Tyler set the medal case down. I don't understand. How could you command a regiment and we didn't know? Because you were too busy talking about your consulting contracts to notice. Because every family gathering turned into the Tyler show. Because I learned that staying invisible was easier than constantly fighting for acknowledgement. But medals, combat, how do you hide that? You don't hide it. People just don't see what they don't expect to see. My father had aged 10 years and 10 minutes. What kind of parents are we? The kind who love their children, I said softer now, just unequally. The party ended early. Guests trickled out, offering awkward congratulations and confused sympathies. I helped my aunt clean up, grateful for something to do with my hands. Grandfather found me in the kitchen washing champagne flutes. That's probably beneath a colonel's dignity, he said quietly. Rank doesn't exempt you from cleanup duty. He picked up a dish towel, started drying. We worked in silence for a few minutes. I was a colonel once, he said eventually, for 3 years before I retired. It was the proudest achievement of my life, I know. And I handed my medals to a boy who did 2 years in the Guard while giving you kitchen tools. You didn't know, I should have known, I should have asked, I should have seen you. He sat down a glass carefully. Tell me about the Silver Star, so I did. I told him about Helmand Province, about the ambush, about the decision to push forward instead of falling back. I told him about bringing my Marines through a kill zone, about the hours of close combat, about the 18 soldiers I'd kept alive through the longest night of my life. He listened without interrupting, tears streaming down his weathered face. When I finished, he said, "That's more courage than I ever showed in 3 wars. That's not true." It is, and I'm ashamed I didn't know it. Grandfather, no, let me finish. He turned to face me fully. I'm 80 years old. I don't have many years left. And I need you to know that you are everything First dreamed a Marine could be. You are the legacy I was trying to build. Not Tyler, not your father. You, something in my chest cracked open. 26 years of being invisible, of being overlooked, of being the practical one. It all rushed out in a single breath. Thank you, I whispered. I'm sorry I made you wait so long to hear it. We stood there in my uncle's kitchen, an 80-year-old colonel and his 44-year-old granddaughter, both wearing the invisible weight of Marine Corps service. Keep the kitchen tools, he said after a while, but next week I want you to come to the house. I have something else for you. Quote, what? My medals, the real ones. The ones I actually earned, not the display pieces. You're the only one who understand what they mean. Grandfather, I can't take. You can and you will. That's an order, Colonel. I smiled through tears. Yes, sir. I left the party late, driving back to my parents' house in darkness. Tyler was waiting on the porch. Hey, he said as I got out of the car. Hey, can we talk? I sat down next to him. The night was cool, stars visible despite the light pollution. I'm sorry, he said, for everything, for talking over you, for assuming, for being a dick, basically. You weren't trying to be. Does that matter? He laughed bitterly. I spent years bragging about my military expertise to my sister, who actually commands troops. God, I'm an idiot. You're not an idiot. I'm something. He looked at me. Why didn't you ever correct me? Ever tell me to shut up? Would you have listened? He thought about that. Probably not. There's your answer. We sat in silence. Then are you really being considered for general? It's preliminary, nothing decided, but it's possible. Yes, Jesus, General Witten, that's Sherry, that's incredible. Thanks, I mean it. I know I've been a shitty brother, but I am proud of you, even if I didn't know what I was supposed to be proud of. I know. Can we start over? Can I actually learn about what you do? Ask real questions, be less of a self-absorbed ass. I smiled. We can try. Good. He stood, stretched. For what it's worth, you were always the one grandfather should have been proud of. I just wish I'd seen it sooner. Me too. 3 weeks later, I visited grandfather's house. He gave me a footlocker, battered, scarred, covered in stickers from a dozen duty stations. Inside, his medals, his ribbons, his service records, everything that mattered from a life in the Corps. These belong to you now, he said. The legacy I was trying to preserve. You're living it. You're what I wanted Tyler to be, what I hoped our family would produce, a warrior with integrity. I held his bronze star, the real one, not the display piece, and felt the weight of his faith in me. I won't let you down, I said. You never have, I just wasn't looking. He died 6 months later, peacefully in his sleep. At the funeral, Tyler gave the eulogy. He talked about service, about sacrifice, about legacy, and then he did something that surprised me. Grandfather's greatest achievement wasn't his service, Tyler said. It was raising a family that understood the meaning of service. My sister Sherry embodies everything he valued. She's a colonel in the Marine Corps, a combat veteran, a leader. She's the legacy he built, even if he didn't realize it until the end. Everything I know about honor, I learned from watching her live it. After the service, General Hart found me. I heard about the Brigadier General Board. It's still pending, not for long. The Commandant's office called me for a reference. I told them you were the best regimental commander I'd seen in 20 years. Sir, you didn't have to. Yes, I did because it's true. He smiled. Your grandfather would have been proud. He was, I said at the end. That's enough. The promotion came through 8 months later. Brigadier General Sherry Witten, United States Marine Corps, 1 star. The ceremony was at Pendleton, full dress blues, 300 Marines in formation. My family came, all of them. Tyler stood at attention the entire time, tears streaming down his face. My mother clutched my father's hand, my cousins, my aunts, my uncles. They all came to see what they'd missed for 26 years. When the commandant pinned on my star, I thought about grandfather, about kitchen utensils and bronze medals and the long road to being seen. How does it feel, General? Someone asked afterward. I looked at my family, at my Marines, at the life I'd built in the shadows. Like everything I earned, I said, and nothing I need. Because that was the truth. The recognition was nice. The acknowledgement mattered, but I'd been a Marine, a leader, a warrior, with or without their approval. I just wished they'd look sooner. But in the end, I'd learned the most important lesson. Your worth isn't determined by who sees it. It's determined by what you do when no one's watching. and I've been.